Hi, this is Randall here in Texas.
And I'm Matt, here in Michigan. Today, Randall and I are going to review Christopher Nolan's latest film, Tenet. Now, Tenet came out in US theaters back in September, but recently released on video and on demand on December 15th. Randall and I were not able to view this movie in theaters, so that is why you're getting this review now. It stars John David Washington, Robert Pattinson, Elizabeth Debicki, Dimple Kapita, and Kenneth Branagh. It is written and directed by Christopher Nolan, who also directed the Dark Knight trilogy, Interstellar, Inception, Dunkirk, The Prestige, and Memento, which we have a review of, so be sure to check that out.
Tenet tells a story of a race against time as the protagonist has to track down components to a device from the future to try and stop the end of the world. It had a $200 million budget and to date has made about $361.4 million back at the box office. Some sources say that in order to even break even with its advertising budget, this movie had to have made at least $400 million. Has fairly positive reviews from both critics and audiences. And personally, I've been really looking forward to watching it, so I'm glad that it finally came out on video. Matt, what did you think of Tenet?
I think it is a decent film, but I personally think that Nolan spent a little bit too much time putting his effort into the overall theme of this movie than some of the other aspects of it. Now, this movie's been out for a little bit, so Randall and I are going to get into spoilers. And I will say one thing, this movie is probably best enjoyed if you know as little about it as possible. So if you have not seen Tenet yet and plan to watch it, be sure to go check it out and then come back to watch our review. Well, Randall, what about you? What do you think?
I'm going to echo a little bit of what you said. I think this is one of Christopher Nolan's most ambitious films yet. Maybe aside from Interstellar, it was a lot of really good ideas, and I genuinely enjoyed watching it. But there are some things where I'm like, oh man, that's really fast. So, for example, I really like the opening scene at the opera house. It grabs your attention really fast and gets you invested in what's going on. And that was really cool. But then right after that, it's almost like Rogue One, where it's like cut, next scene, cut, next scene, cut, next scenes, and things are happening so fast and it's hard to keep up. I'm like, wow, this is already like a 2.5 hour film, and the beginning is at such a pace that it's really kind of hard to keep up. But I still genuinely enjoyed it. I like the concepts that they're going for in it.
Oh yeah, I definitely admire the concept and everything going on. And like you said too, it just same thing with me. I felt like they were just trying to put so much into this movie, in such a time. Like I said, it's already a bit longer, 2.5 hours or so, and yet there's so much in this movie that if you're not paying attention to everything, you might miss out a little bit on it.
It was hard to take notes for this one, honestly, because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh no, I looked down. What happened?
And I think the actors in this do a really good job of it. The only problem I had with it, I didn't really care too much for the characters as much. Like the protagonist, to me, I really didn't know much about him other than he's like this CIA agent and he's just trying to save the world. And then, we're trying to go with, Debicki's character, and I didn't really care too much for her character. I guess because she has a son and stuff, I'm supposed to root for her in this movie.
I do think the characters are underserved, but the it's weird because on the flip side of that, all of the actors did a really good job with their characters, especially Robert Pattinson. I really can't praise him enough. But the star of the show, which is weird because he doesn't even show up till halfway through, is Kenneth Branagh. He just nails his character. Even if the script is a bit of a letdown, the actual acting is pretty top notch. It's just they don't have too much to do all the time.
Oh yeah, Branagh is an excellent villain. I think in this film he really does play the character well, and I think you lose him a bit in that character. Branagh's done so many like well prominent roles, but this I never thought about any of those other roles in this movie. He fully enveloped this character for this film. Excellent job by him in this movie.
the whole concept of this film is this idea of inversion. Like, hey, you and I, right now, we're all going through time forwards, more or less. But if you invert all of our particles, physics stuff, blah, 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 it's all in the film, then we could, in theory, move backwards through time. And it's a really interesting time travel mechanic. So I wrote down that it's the like polar opposite of Edge of Tomorrow, where on Edge of Tomorrow you can time travel back to a point and try and change things, really just do it again. That's not how time travel works in Tenet. In Tenet, the forward motion of time and the backwards inversion motion of time are happening in parallel. So you can see things happening in reverse as much as the people who are in reverse can see things happening forward and interact with each other. I love the unique take on time travel. It's not just a Back to the Future type time traveling.
One scene in particular I want to talk about that, or which we kind of see twice. It's the fight when the protagonist is actually fighting himself, but we don't realize that until later on in the film. I love how we see it played one way from like the protagonist going forward, and then we get it see played the other way with the antagonist going back through time. So this is excellent job of, design, film and everything, and to finally see it, when you see it both ways, it works really well. But at the same time too, it kind of, I would say this is where I'm getting in, where as little that you know about this film before watching it, the better. Because even with the trailers, I kind of got the hint that, that the protagonist and Robert Pattinson's characters may be traveling through time a little bit. So even at the beginning, when we have that opera scene and you have the one person that fires the bullet backwards, it's kind of like, all right, that's probably either himself or it's Robert Pattinson. And then the same thing too, when Robert Pattinson is fighting the mask guy or whatever and takes his mask off and then just looks at him and throws the mask. At that point, it's like, well, yep, well, he probably just, ran into the protagonist and stuff there. So, me, I was like, if I didn't watch the trailers, I don't know that I would have made those connections that early.
Honestly, even without the trailers, when the protagonist is fighting himself, I was like, I got it a little wrong. I'll admit that I got it a little bit wrong. I was like, oh, they're fighting themselves. And it turns out, no, they're just fighting the protagonist. I was a little wrong, but I was a little right. But the big scene that I think where everything comes together and where the audience can really start to understand how the time travel works in this scenario is the end battle scene, because you have two forces fighting, but really it's like four forces fighting. Each side of the battle, instead of like, hey, here's the good guys and here's the bad guys and they're fighting, you have forward moving good guys and forward moving bad guys and reverse moving bad guys and reverse, moving good guys, all kind of like giving their forward, comrades time to see things, and you get to see the building kind of like blown up from both sides of the battle at the exact same time because they synced their watches. How that's filmed really finally gives the audience like, okay, if I didn't get the time travel before and what's going on with all these characters, now watching this battle unfold, it really starts to make a lot more sense.
I agree, but this is kind of where I get into a little bit of the criticisms about this film. These set pieces on their own, I think, are amazing. Like you said, it definitely builds up to that big one. Once they take smaller ones and set up exactly how everything works, it makes that scene all go together. But at the same time, too, a lot of times in movies, I think sometimes simpler is better. And I think this movie spent so much time setting those up for these awesome scenes and stuff that as a movie as a whole, it was a little bit, lesser for me, I think, for that.
That's fair. I wasn't disappointed by this film at all, honestly. It just, yeah, I can nitpick some things, and I think that maybe you kind of alluded earlier to the characters, you don't really care about them so much, and I probably wrote that down as more of a, it's too easy. Like everything seems like everything's just going according to plan, and it's just too easy. There's no wrenches thrown in, and then when you get to the end, and you're like, oh, okay, it all makes sense why it's so easy, I guess, because you find out how the protagonist is is doing something, and you're like, okay, so now looking back on it with like, I've seen the entire film, I can go back almost Memento style and put all the pieces together for why certain things that in theory should have been really hard and had lots of planning were just super easy to pull off.
Nolan's known for these kind of like cerebral movies and stuff, kind of, like The Prestige and Interstellar and Memento and stuff. I just feel like that became more the focus of this movie than actually some of like the relationships and stuff in this film. Kind of like Interstellar, we still get that relationship between like Murph and her father and stuff. That's still the focal point of it. For us, the protagonist, we really don't have that much for him. Like I was saying, he's just kind of like a CIA agent trying to save the world in this one.
It's because it's plot driven instead of character driven. That's what I think you're trying to get to. When you watch most of Christopher Nolan's other works, it really is all about the characters and them being put into a situation and their interactions with other characters. And in this one, it is not. In this one, it is very plot driven, and that is very different. And generally, when you find a plot driven movie like the Star Wars prequels, for example, they do suffer. There's one thing before we cap this all off, I want to return a little bit to Kenneth Branagh's character, because he plays a really good villain in this. But then there's like this almost throwaway line for his motives, and really he's just an ego maniac.
Because their oceans rose and their rivers ran dry. Don't you see? They have no choice but to turn back. We're responsible.
You're just giving us this one line for basically we ruined the planet for the future and expecting like, oh, that's enough for us, That's enough for the audience. Like, no, that's not enough, He plays a good bad guy, but his motives are really wishy-washy.
Well, I think what's really good about him as a character, too, is he's like the one character that we have like a true backstory for, too. They actually build up kind of why he's the way he is and stuff with how he, found like the gold or whatever in this. We actually get a big backstory for him. So we kind of explain a little bit more why he is the way he is. And I think that's part of what makes him such a great character and a great villain and stuff in this film.
So we care more about the bad guy than we do about the good
guy. But hey, sometimes that works. Sometimes if you have a bad enough baddie, that helps to elevate your hero a bit.
It's a pretty good watch. It's probably not as good as some of Nolan's other films, in my opinion, but I would not miss it. I'm happy that I gave it a watch, and I recommend that you guys do too.
I think it's a good film. Excellent design for this film. Though I wouldn't say I would probably put this in, I don't know, probably doesn't make the top half of my favorite Nolan films, but still a worthwhile watch to check it out. We want to know what you guys think about Tenet. Let us know in the comments below. If you like our review, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Also hit that subscribe button to see our latest videos and get notifications when they come out. We release videos every Monday and Thursday, and we also have a Facebook page. There we will post a day before our videos come out to let you know what the next topic is going to be. For now, I'm Matt here in Michigan. Have a good day.
And I'm Randall here in Texas. I'll see everyone in the next one.
Next time on No Market Media. Please consider checking out some of our other videos.